actually the writer, Papa Thomas Sowell, that I'll share. You can be unable figure, and you are an original thinker.
Okay. I have friends in Holland. Yeah, Ellen and Robin. I met them yesterday.
Great.
Yeah, the book is slow. I'm trying to get more time.
Okay, please be quiet. Give me 4 minutes, because you know I don't do this, okay? Quiet. I see you talking. You have security. I can throw you out. Yeah, okay. Good evening. Quiet. Don't make this hard. Okay, good evening. Good evening. I am Pamela Geller of Atlas Shrugs. Ladies and gentlemen, lovers of freedom, I want to thank you for joining me and my esteemed colleagues, Dr. Andrew Bostom, Robert Spencer, and David Horowitz, in support of Geert Wilders. I want to thank you for joining me in this historic event. Now, I know what you're going to say. Historic Atlas? It's a little over the top, isn't it? No, it's not. I'm going to tell you why it's historic. It's historic because truth is the new hate speech in this era that we're living in. Showing Fitna and discussing the infringement on free speech is considered a violation of Muslim rights, according to CARE, who filed a complaint with Attorney General Holder today. Be nice. How Attorney General Holder and the Obama administration handles it, it should be interesting. It's historic because, quiet please, it's historic because freedom of speech is the cornerstone of this great constitutional republic, and it is in danger. We are very American-centric. You know, why should we care about some politician in Europe? We don't care about Europe. Let's be honest. Wait, a joke. We can joke, can't we? We're conservatives. We can joke. We don't care about politics. Now, let me tell you why we have to care about this particular politician in Europe, Geert Wilders. This war is not a nation-state war. This war is a global war. It is a global jihad against the West, against Western values. And who's going to fight this war? This is not one country's war. This is the war of the defenders of freedom, defenders of Western civilization, centuries of bloodshed, toil, heartache, to come this far in civilization, to throw it away with both hands? I ask you. So this man, interestingly enough, this is not about Geert Wilders. He's a surrogate. He's a surrogate for us. He's the proxy on trial in the war on the West. It's your battle. It's not Wilders' battle. I mean, I know you don't know him, but I can tell you right now, he's the most unlikely, well, let's say hero, a mild-mannered, erudite, urbane, gently-spoken man who restates the obvious. That's what he does. And he's being prosecuted for it in this country. And you can say, well, what does this have to do with us? I'm going to tell you right now, they're 5-10 years ahead of us. 5-10 years ahead of us. There's hate speech legislation pending, there's the fairness doctrine, and people always say to me, Pamela, you know, aren't you afraid? I said, no, aren't you afraid? I'm afraid to do nothing. Aren't you afraid? I'm not afraid. afraid. I am afraid to do nothing. And that's why I'm so, look, just look at the power of the blog. I mean, you gotta, it's unbelievable. There was no media on this. I had no money for press releases. It was me, Robert Spencer from Jihad Watch, Dr. Andrew Bostom, who's a leading scholar on Islam. You too, Spencer, don't yell at me later. Hello. Legacy of Jihad, legacy of Islamic anti-Semitism, just to show you that the Jew hatred and the hatred of the infidels is not something new, was not inspired by Hitler, but Hitler was inspired by Muhammad. And we're dealing with a very scary ideology. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, just one last thing. And why I was obsessed with showing this film at CPAC. CPAC is the largest gathering of conservative political activists in America. And did you know that this is the largest attended CPAC in history? 8,000 people? It was the largest attended CPAC in history, and it's not even an election year. Why? Because people know there's something wrong. People came in, we had 8,000 activists out there. These are really true Americans. These are true Americans. There's not one panel on Islamic supremacism. There's not one panel on the war. There's not one panel on freedom of speech. There's one small foreign policy panel with Gaffney, Mark, whatever his name is from the NRO. I mean, you know what I mean. No, he's a lovely man. Okay. I can't the night too long. I'd like to introduce my colleagues who made it happen without Dr. Andrew Bostom and Robert Spencer and David Horowitz. This event would never have happened. So I'm going to turn it back over.
It only took 3 years to pronounce my name properly. She's such a wallflower. Beaumarchais' Marriage of Figaro, written at the close of the 18th century, included this freedom of speech monologue in Act 5, Scene 3. I cobbled together a verse comedy about the customs of the harem, assuming that as a Spanish writer, I can say what I like about Muhammad without drawing hostile fire. Next thing, some envoy from God knows where turns up and complains that in my play I have offended the Ottoman Empire, Persia, a large slice of the Indian Peninsula, the whole of Egypt, the kingdoms of Barca, which is Ethiopia, Tripoli, Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. And so my play sinks without trace, all to placate a bunch of Muslim princes, not one of whom, as far as I know, can read, but who beat the living daylights out of us and say we are Christian dogs. Since they can't stop a man thinking, they take it out on his hide instead.
That's right.
Sadly, today, over 2 centuries later, Dutch parliamentarian Geert Wilders' free speech rights are under attack in an effort to appease the same irredentist Muslim attitudes. Attitudes which are devoid of self-criticism and violently opposed to any criticism of Islam by non-Muslim infidels. Wilders' film, Fitna, the putative source of this Muslim outrage, includes examples of how various Quranic verses are used by Muslim clerics and political leaders to incite Muslim populations to violence. And Fitna is entirely faithful to classical mainstream Islamic exegesis on the Quranic verses cited in the film, regardless of what cultural jihadists and their witting or unwitting apologists and abettors may claim. It is beyond Orwellian to vilify, let alone prosecute Wilders, who simply holds up a mirror to Islamic societies for being in any way responsible for the Quranic incitement and Muslim violence. His documentary faithfully records, and he appropriately condemns. Moreover, Geert Wilders is opposed to hate speech laws. He has proposed the withdrawal of all hate speech legislation in Europe and a European First Amendment. Earlier, while calling the Quran hate speech, with specific reference to the Dutch Penal Code, Wilders was simply asking for consistent application of the Dutch law. And like Winston Churchill, who wrote Mein Kampf was, quote, the new Koran of faith and war, turgid, verbose, shapeless, but pregnant with its message, Wilders compared the Quran to Mein Kampf and called it hate speech according to the Dutch Penal Code. Wilders' previous demand for consistency recalls the Calcutta Quran petition of the 1980s. Like his Hindu predecessors, Wilders was fed up with Muslim abuse of similar Indian laws and simply saying if one bans hate speech in accord with existing Dutch law, then the Quran is hate speech. The Calcutta Quran petition chronicled how it was the abuse of hate speech laws by Muslims seeking to impose Sharia mandates on non-Muslim majorities that was the source of the problem. As described in the Calcutta Quran petition, 2 Hindus were arrested under Indian Penal Code sections exploited by Muslims to prevent public criticism of Muhammad or other aspects of their creed for publishing a poster which simply cited 24 Quranic verses with a caption, "Why riots take place in this country." In this landmark case, the Hindus were eventually acquitted by a sober magistrate who opined the following. A close perusal of the ayats, the verses, shows that the same are harmful and teach hatred and are likely to create differences between Mohammedans on the one hand and the remaining communities on the other, unquote. It is well past time for the media across the political spectrum to stop their grotesque mischaracterization of Wilders' unequivocal defense of free speech. But demonizing Wilders and imposing de facto limitations on his free speech criticism of Islam, no matter how reasonable his concerns may be, is a task for which our craven, lemming-like media elites appear far better suited. To amplify this final point on media responsibility or irresponsibility, let me close with this sobering observation by Professor Robert Conquest, the preeminent scholar of Soviet communist totalitarianism. And here's what he said. One role of the democratic media is, of course, to criticize their own governments, draw attention to the faults and failings of their own country. But when this results in a transfer of loyalties to a far worse and thoroughly inimical culture, or at least to a largely uncritical favoring of such a culture, it becomes a morbid affliction, involving often enough the uncritical acceptance of that culture's own standards. And now, a man whose unapologetic scholarship and fearless eloquence is so rare in our age, Robert Spencer.
Thank you. I didn't expect that. This is one of the strangest conferences I've spoken to. Anyway, look, there's a certain kind of Alice in Wonderland aspect to the challenge of hate speech being leveled at Geert Wilders and at others like him. And I think that it's especially piquant that many of you, if not all of you, were provided with a specimen of it on your way in tonight. Did you get this paper? I love this. This paper says, and you can read along with me, it's point 1, 2, 3, 4. The excerpts of Quran in his film, Fitna, which we will see soon, are wrong. The excerpts of Quran in his film are wrong. He is also, what do you think? Taking them out of context. Yeah. It's not possible for somebody like me or somebody like Geert Wilders to quote the Quran in context. It can't be done. I've tried, though, and I'm going to try again tonight. Very briefly, I hope not to try your patience. This is the Tafsir al-Jalalain, which is an ancient and widely respected mainstream Muslim commentary written by Muslims for Muslims on the Quran. And so let's give these folks their due. They made all this trouble to print this up and to give this out to us, and they said that Geert Wilders is quoting the Quran out of context. And so here's some context. This is one of the most one of the most popular and widely respected and widely cited among Muslims commentary on the Quran. All right? Now, a couple of verses are quoted in Fitna. Fitna, the film that we're going to see. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview. There is, for example, chapter 8, verse 60 of the Quran, which tells believers to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah. And of course, we all know that I just took it out of context, because we all know that there's a perfectly cuddly way to strike terror into the hearts of unbelievers. If only we understood it in context, then everything would be great. And it really means give them a hug. So, context. Chapter 8, verse 60, according to the commentary, means this: arm yourselves to fight against them with all the firepower. And here, the messenger of Allah, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, said here meant shooting. Shooting. But in love, in peace. Now see, is this hate speech? Actually, yes, I'm committing hate speech, as you all know. I'm committing hate speech right now. Because as we all know, that when a Muslim book, or a Muslim preacher, or a Muslim imam or spokesman of any kind, or a venerable Muslim source says, strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah, arm yourselves to fight them with all the firepower you can muster, and that means shooting, we all know that that's okay. That is a venerable statement of the religion of peace and context. But when I quote it, or Geert Wilders quotes it, then it's hate speech. You get it? You have to understand how this works. It's only hate speech when the wrong people do it. When we quote it in a disapproving manner, when we say, well, I really actually would object to being shot because I'm an unbeliever, thank you very much. I don't like that idea. Well, then I must be a racist. Chapter 47, verse 4. When you meet the unbelievers, strike at their necks. Strike at their necks. Which means, according to the commentary, meaning kill them. In context, striking people's necks, the commentary helpfully tells us, striking people's necks generally results in their death. And so, you see, more hate speech. I quoted their book. And that's all that Geert Wilders has done. He has become the foremost exponent of freedom and of truth in the modern age by quoting their book. By quoting their book. We live, you know, I read back in history, I read the times of Henry V and times of great nobility of spirit and nobility of action, and I think we live in such a silly and stupid and tawdry and cheap age in which just telling the truth makes you a hero, and yet there are so few heroes. And all we need to do is stand up and be honest and tell the truth, and we will win the day. And so I want to bring you... the foremost hero, the foremost truth teller of our age, Geert Wilders.
Thank you, dear Pamela, Robert, Andrew, and David for making this possible here tonight. Thank you all, and especially thank you, U.S. immigration authorities. sent back on the first plane. I feel indeed very honored to have the privilege to speak here in the United States and to show my short documentary Fitna that you will see in a couple of minutes. To be in the United States of America, I do feel, and thank you for that, at home here in the United States. Today, unfortunately, the dearest of our many freedoms is under attack all throughout Europe. Free speech is no longer a given. What we once considered a natural element of our existence, our birthright, is now something we again have to battle for. And as you already know, I will be prosecuted in my home country because of my film Fitna. My remarks regarding Islam and my view concerning what some call a religion of peace. And a few years from now, I might be a criminal. And on top of that, the Kingdom of Jordan also threatens to prosecute me for insulting Islam and is threatening to ask for my extradition as well. But whether or not I end up in jail, ladies and gentlemen, or whether or not I end up in jail is not the most pressing issue. I gave up my own freedom 4.5 years ago, when I came under full-time police protection ever since because of death threats from Muslims and terrorist groups linked to Al-Qaeda. I live in safe houses with my family in army barracks, and yes, even in prison cells to be safe. But once again, it's not about me. It's not about Geert Wilders. The real question is, will free speech be put behind bars? And the larger question to the West is, will we leave our children? Will we leave your children? Will we leave Europe's children the values of Rome, of Athens and Jerusalem, or the values of Gaza, Mecca and Tehran? And this is what video blogger Pat Condell said in one of his latest YouTube appearances. He said, if I thought about Muslims the way that holy book talks about me, I'd be arrested for hate speech. And of course, Mr. Condell is a stand-up comedian, but in the video he is that serious and the joke is on us. Hate speech will always be used against the people defending the West in order to please and appease Muslims. They can say whatever they want. They can say, throw gays from apartment buildings, kill the Jews, slaughter the infidels, destroy Israel, jihad against the West, whatever their holy book tells them. Ladies and gentlemen, make no mistake. My prosecution is a full-fledged attack by the left on freedom of speech in order to please Muslims. In fact, in the Netherlands it was started by a member of the Dutch Labour Party. And if you read what the Court of Amsterdam, the Court of Appeal that ordered my prosecution, has written about me, you read the same text that cultural relativists produce. In fact, cultural relativism is the biggest disease of Europe today. Most of our politicians believe that all cultures are equal. Well, let me tell you, they are not. Our Western culture, based on Christianity, on Judaism, and humanism, even isn't every aspect better than the Islamic culture. In fact, it's like the brave apostate Wafa Sultan, who is residing now in your country, in Los Angeles, said, it's a comparison between a culture of reason and a culture of barbarism. Back to my country. How low can it go in the Netherlands? About my prosecution, the Wall Street Journal noted, and I quote, "This is not a small victory for Islamic regimes seeking to export their censorship laws wherever Muslims reside." The journal concluded that by the Netherlands accepting the free speech standards of Saudi Arabia, I stand correct in my observation that, and I quote, "Muslim immigration is eroding traditional Dutch liberties." Now, if the Wall Street Journal has the moral clarity to see that my prosecution is the logical outcome of our disastrous, self-hating, cultural, relativist immigration policy, then why can't the European liberal establishment see the same thing? Why? Why aren't they getting at least a little bit scared by the situation today? For example, in the United Kingdom, that tells us that the Muslim population in Britain is now growing 10 times as fast as the rest of society. Why? Why don't those liberals not care? Well, the answer is they don't care. Because they are blinded. They don't care. Because they are blinded. They are blinded by their so much greater than the appreciation of our many liberties. And therefore, they are willing to sacrifice everything. The left once stood for women's rights, for equality, for democracy, and now they favor immigration policies that will end all this. Many in my country even lost their decency. Elite politicians in the Netherlands, in the streets of Amsterdam, have no problems to participate in and even finance demonstrations where Muslims shout death to the Jews. 70 years after Auschwitz, they know of no shame. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks ago, I tried to get into Britain, a fellow EU country. I was invited to speak in Parliament, in the House of Lords. However, upon arrival at London Heathrow Airport, I was refused entry in the United Kingdom. I was detained for 3 hours and sent back on the first plane to the Netherlands. And the reason I would threaten community harmony, whatever community harmony means, and therefore public security. And all this because of my film Fitna. It was an absolute disgrace. The British Home Secretary even publicly admitted on BBC television that she never watched my film Fitna, but decided to ban me from the United Kingdom anyway. And today the news in Britain is that the spokesman of Hezbollah was invited and very welcome in the United Kingdom. And if I would have been admitted to the United Kingdom, and if I would have been allowed to speak and to speak in the House of Lords, I would have loved to have reminded the British audience of a great man that once spoke in the House of Commons. In 1982, President Reagan gave a speech. In 1982, President Reagan gave a speech that very few people in the United Kingdom liked. Reagan called upon the West to reject communism and to defend freedom, and he introduced the phrase evil empire. And President Reagan's speech stands out as a clarion call to preserve our liberties. And I quote this very important word of President Reagan. He said, "If history teaches anything, it teaches that self-delusion in the face of unpleasant facts is folly." And what Reagan, of course, meant is that you cannot run away, you cannot hide away from history. You cannot escape the dangers of ideologies that are out to destroy you. Denial is no option. Communism was the threat. Today, Islamism is the threat to the West. I suggest to defend freedom in general and freedom of speech in particular. I propose the withdrawal of all hate speech legislation in Europe. I propose a European First Amendment. In Europe, we should defend freedom of speech like you Americans do. In Europe, freedom of speech... In Europe, freedom of speech should be extended instead of restricted. The right to criticize, ideologies and religions are necessary conditions for a vital democracy. As George Orwell once said, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Let us defend freedom of speech and let us gain strength and work harder to become even stronger. Millions of people think just like you and me. Millions of people believe that liberty is precious, that democracy is better than Sharia. And why? Why, after all, should we be afraid? Our many freedoms and our prosperity are indeed the result of centuries of endeavor, centuries of hard work and sacrifice. We do not stand alone. Ladies and gentlemen, our enemies should know we will never apologize for being free men. We will never give in. We will never surrender. There is no stronger power in the world than the force of free men fighting for the great cause of liberty. Because freedom is the birthright of all men. Freedom must prevail and freedom will prevail. Thank you.
Fortune. If you have a few extra shekels, now the dollar's worthless, thank you, President Obama. If you have a few extra bucks, please make a donation to the fund. It's not required, but do the right thing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. Listen, if you pay to CPAC, that's good boss. You give a couple of bucks. We're going to show Fitna now. Do not leave, you must stay through it all. And if you have a check or anything, you can give it to me, or Andrew, Robert, Bjorn, anybody, we'll take your money. Anyway, the problem is, if you really want to know, the economic, the academic, the social, and the cultural jihad is not what people see. You know that old analogy where you put a frog in the water and boil in the water and he jumps right out? But if you put a frog in warm water, tepid water, and you turn up the boil, he never knows what's happened to him, and suddenly he's dead. And the thing is, what's happening here is what worries me about America is that one day, everyone's going to wake up in a gulag.
Yes, that's right.
It's not, you know, everybody's waiting for like the big bang. There is no big bang. It's one thing, it's, you know, the kid in New Jersey who wants to pray in the public school. What's the big deal? Let's let the kids pray. But it's not. It's imposing their Islam on us. Listen, this is America. It's got nothing to do with nothing. There are no special classes. There is no special treatment for special classes. Everybody is equal. The Muslim footbaths in the this is how you impose Islamic supremacism. I I mean, you know, could you imagine if the Christians asked for a special washing area in the university, and they'd be hung up? They don't get well, that's another thing I want to say. You know, there are no Muslim footbaths in Iran. And so it's a test. You see, you keep moving the line in the sand. You're the frog. And people don't realize that the media, let's be honest, I don't know if there's media here, but I don't know why. I can't believe you actually don't report real news. So what would you be doing here? I mean, it's a combination of fear and power, and let's be honest, you know, even Fox, the one last Salvation, what percentage is owned by the Saudis now? Is it 6 or 7%?
4.5.
No, it's more than that. So you're the one that keeps posting buildings. I'm not taking you seriously. There's the cultural jihad. You see a fashion. You see Urban Outfitters. The cover of Urban Outfitters is the Palestinian scarf. And every time, I'm going to stop torturing you now. Believe it or not, I do talk about other things once in a great while. I would have the electricity. Please don't forget to give anything that you want to give to Mr. Wilders. It would be greatly appreciated. And again, the Atlas readers, you really, really rock. Thanks so much. Please